Greetings, Mythics. Yes, hello, welcome. My name is Ken Boyter, otherwise known as the Ink-Pot Monkey. Welcome to episode 2 review of The Wheel of Time. Yes, it is a fantasy series, 14 books in total, by Robert Jordan, latterly finished off by Brandon Sanderson. Over 90 million copies worldwide sold. But we're not reviewing the books, no, we're reviewing the Amazon Prime TV series. And I have watched episode 1. If you want to check that out, you can find that also on the Mythical Tales from Edra YouTube channel. This is episode 2. The story continues. Now, just to let you know, I did enjoy episode 1. I thought they followed the book fairly closely. Yes, there were a few changes. That's probably to be expected. But the changes weren't because of any political or any other agenda that the makers may have had. No, they've kept that out and they're just making changes, it seems anyway, because it's necessary for an adaptation from a book to the film or TV. Because, as you could probably know already, in a book, the author can actually have the internal thoughts of each character, or one character, or all of the characters, or none of the characters. No, they normally have at least one. So it's difficult to do that on TV, isn't it? Unless there's a voiceover, but you don't want a voiceover every 5 minutes. Just look at Blade Runner, the original cinematic release. Why did they put the voiceover? Apparently Harrison Ford and Ridley Scott thought it was a terrible idea, so they just said do it really badly and then the studio can't use it. But they did, and luckily the director's cut came out without the voiceover and it's much better. You don't need a voiceover. Yes, there is a little bit of a voiceover, but that was initially in episode 1 to set up the scene, to set a little bit of what the world is about, and that's fine. They do it in Lord of the Rings. I don't mind that, but they don't do it too often. Episode 2. Well, what happens? There will be spoilers. I am going to do a spoiler review, but let me do a non-spoilery bit now. Overall, I did like it. They did stick to the book pretty well. Now, I've only read 600 and... Oh, I've just noticed an illustration. Oh, it's another map. Ooh, you get maps. Which is quite a good idea. I'm a writer myself, and I do like a good map, so it might be worth putting some maps in, because I'm writing an epic one as well, a high fantasy where they're going on a journey, a quest if you like, across the land of Edra, and I hadn't thought of putting maps halfway through, so there you go. I am 656 pages out of 770, so I've nearly finished it. Episode 2 is probably, I don't know where it takes us up to exactly, but it's a good, I don't know, 400 pages maybe, episode 2, so 1 and 2 probably covers that. Maybe the whole series, now I've not read around because I didn't want any spoilers, maybe the whole series just takes us through book 1. There are 14 of these bad boys, so let's hope we get 14 series. So far so good, I am enjoying it. Now let's get into the spoilers. What happened? What happened in episode 2? Well, if you already know a little bit about this, there is a world that I'm not sure we ever learn what the name of, it's like Middle Earth, but I'm not sure we actually know what the name of the fantasy world is, but that doesn't necessarily matter. I'm not, I can live without that. I just know it's sort of a medieval type world, not, it's not exactly medieval times, but it's of that flavour, it's that Lord of the Rings feel to it. And there is something called the One Power, or the Wheel of Time, which seems to be some sort of mysterious magical force that it kind of happens all at the same time. I'm not 100% sure how it works yet, but that's the beauty of it. There's the mystery, the awe of this type of magic. And there's a Wheel of Time, and it seems that these strands, sort of, you can bend to the strands, or you can bend the strands of time, just depending on who you are. There seems to be 3 or 4 different factions. I was going to do my Ted Rogers impression there. 3, 2, 1, Dusty Bin. Look it up if you don't know what I'm talking about.
Of your big Saturday entertainment, 3, 2, 1. The show that's 3 in 1.
And there's about 3 or 4 different factions. We have the Two Rivers Gang, or the Fellowship in other words, because it does closely mimic, certainly in this book, Lord of the Rings, which is what Robert Jordan intended anyway. So he's done a very good job of that. And so you've got the Two Rivers gang. So that's I can't remember now. Rand, Perrin, who else? Ergwin. I don't know how you pronounce that. Then we have Matt. Those are the four, and these four seem to have something about them. There is another faction, the Aras. I can't remember how you pronounce it. I don't know how to pronounce it. The Adasei, something like that. Adasei.
The Aes Sedai.
Anyway, you're probably shaking your fist at my pronunciations. Now, they seem to be a sect of magical women who are very powerful, and they can bend and use the power, the one power, at will, but it does cost them. It costs them their health, so they can't do it too much, otherwise they get sickly and weak. And apparently, and we've learned in this episode, that they can't heal themselves, which is normally why they travel in pairs, or at least in a group, or at least, you know, in a pair, because then they could heal each other. This time, though, it's just one person, one of these magical women, who is called Morianne, I think that's how you pronounce her name, and she has a companion, Lan, who is I can't remember what his faction is, it slipped my mind, but he's like a warrior type character, and he seems to be travelling with her and helping her on her quest. Now, her quest seems to be to seek out the Dragonborn, and it is one of these four Two Rivers people, and we don't know which one it is yet. Then we have the Dark One, who is this mysterious thing that we only heard talk about. We've not seen anything to do with that, and that's sort of lurking, you know, in the ether somewhere, I guess. And the Dark One is trying to come back. And then we have his or her, because we're not quite sure, the minions, if you like. So we have the Trollocs. Oh yes, be careful how you pronounce that. We have the Trollocs, who are basically orcs, and then we have been introduced to a Fade. Now, the Fade are sort of these hideous creatures that seem to be able to control the orcs, which I would imagine are pretty similar to the ring wraiths in Lord of the Rings. So we have that faction, and in this episode, we are introduced to another faction. Oh, there's also another faction called the Wisdom, which is part of the Two Rivers. And again, they're a group of women who seem to be able to use magic, but it's for healing. And it seems to be lesser than Morianne's one. But they sort of seem to tap into the same magical source as well. Now, we are introduced to the White Cloaks in this episode. And the White Cloaks, well, they seem pretty evil. They seem not evil. Well, yeah, evil. Pretty cruel, maybe. Cruel is maybe the more word. These seem to be like the police or the guards of the area. I don't know how or the kingdom or the queendom. I'm not quite sure yet what where we're at and how it all pans out. But they seem to be the guards and the police force, if you like, of the area. And it opens up with what we then learn is a questioner. And he is pretty cruel. He's pretty callous. And they seem to be wanting to discover the women faction, not the Wisdom, but the other one that I can't pronounce, the Adastai. I can't pronounce them.
The Aes Sedai.
Morianne's group of people, basically.
The Aes Sedai.
And it does open up pretty cruelly, where he's found one, they found one, and they're burning her alive. But before they've burnt her alive, they've cut her hands off, which is pretty grim. And each of these magical women seem to be wearing a ring. And so he collects these rings on his waistband, on his belt, basically. And so he's pretty cruel. And it does remind you of medieval England and possibly America and Europe as well, where they were, idiotically trying to hunt witches.
I'm not a witch, I'm not a witch.
But you are dressed as one.
They dressed me up like this. And this isn't my nose, it's a false one.
So there we are. So it's a similar situation to that. It opens up with that. Now, the feeling of that is it's like, again, it's not, the books aren't particularly gritty, not like Game of Thrones standard, they're more Lord of the Rings. So again, this is on the edge of that kind of, you know, cruelty, like adultness in terms of, you know, violence. So again, I don't want it to go further than that. I don't want it to be a Game of Thrones because it's a different beast. Game of Thrones is definitely different to Lord of the Rings. We're more in the Lord of the Rings territory. From the book that I can gather anyway. And it might differ in other books, but I'm not sure yet. So hopefully they'll keep within bounds, and so far they have. Then we have the Fellowship, as I'm going to call them, Rand and Perrin and Matt and Erwin and Morianne and Lan. They leave the village. So episode 1, their village was attacked by the Trollocs. And they escape and they need to cross a river. They come to the crossing, and there's a ferryman who's got this big, you know, long ferry type thing, wooden structure where you can take horses on. And again, it reminds me of Lord of the Rings, the bit where Frodo and Samwise need to, you know, cross the river. And again, the ring wraiths can't cross rivers. Equally, Trollocs and Fade can't cross the river as well. So they manage just to escape, but the ferryman, he says, look, you can't leave me here, you know, or you can't leave my son, I'm expecting my son back. He's going to walk into all these Trollocs and get murdered. You've got to do something. And Morianne, she's a bit like, well, you know, we can't really do anything. There's too many Trollocs for them to tackle on themselves, by themselves, and we can't really leave the ferry where it is, because the Trollocs can just pull it back with the rope and then climb on it and come over and they will catch them. So she does something which, again, these Aridais, I can't pronounce it.
The Aes Sedai.
You're going to get so annoyed with me. Even though I was practicing it when I was watching it, I was going, yeah, and I've forgotten how to pronounce it.
The Aes Sedai.
She actually sinks the ferry. And so you might think, what? Because that means she's basically sacrificed the ferryman's son. She's just said, look, it's not a lot we can do. So again, it's that sort of, you know, we're unsure yet about their morals, this group of women. But in a way, she is trying to protect the four people, you know, the four Fellowship people. And yet she did offer to say to Ferryman, look, come with us because you can't stay here. And he said, no, I've got to go back for my son. So when he sees the ferry leaving, because she then magically pushes the ferry and then starts this whirlpool and it sinks, he dives in. He dives in to try and stop the boat. And he sinks and dies. So that has a bit of an effect on Rand especially, but Perrin, Matt and Owen, they sort of look at that and think, okay, was that the right choice to make? So they're a little bit unsure of her and exactly what her motives are, because they've had to trust her. They've basically said, look, one of you is this Dragonborn who's going to oppose the Dark One. I don't know who it is yet, but I'm going to get you to this town where it's safe and we can discover, you know, who is the Dragonborn. But they're not 100% sure. Would you trust somebody like that? I don't know. I don't know what I would do in that situation. So they carry on and they get into the woods and they think, right, well, they've bought a bit of time because the Trollocs are going to have to go upriver and kind of around and try and track them like that. They then manage to, I'm just looking at my notes now, they manage to, oh, that's it, yeah, Morianne heals a horse, so we learn that she then gets weaker and, you know, heals a horse. And then the gang, the Fellowship, they sleep overnight in the woods. Morianne, but before they go to sleep, Morianne talks to Erwin, if that's how you pronounce her name, who is an apprentice wise woman. She was learning the ways of her, you know, that tribe, that sort of magical group of people, group of women. And she was apprentice, but the actual leader of that group was killed in the attack. And Morianne talks to Owen saying, well, look, why don't you join us? Why don't you join the Aes Sedai?
The Aes Sedai.
Because you can tap into the power, the source. You've got the gift. Why don't you join us? And she's not sure, because she's not quite sure who they are. And so, but you know, there's a nice exchange there, and we see a bit of magic. And she kind of says, "Look, this is the ring. I think it's a ring." And she says, "Look, I can call upon it." So the ring seems to be important as well to the magic use. And Erwin manages to kind of coax a bit of magic out of the ring, it seemed. And so it's like, "Look, you've got it in you." And so she's like, "Well, I'm not sure." So then we cut to to Rand. And he pulls this bat out of his mouth. It's like he wakes up and goes, "Oh," pulls this bat out of his mouth, and it's really horrible. And he's like, "What? What is this?" Blah. And then he looks up and he sees this ghostly sort of figure in the distance coming towards him. And then he wakes up and you think, "Whoa, okay, so that was a dream." So he was dreaming that he was asleep, and then he woke up, pulls the bat out, then he actually wakes up properly. And it is morning light, so he goes to see the others. And they also have the dream, but slightly different. But also there are dead bats all about them. So did it happen? Did it not happen? How come they've all had the same-ish dream? Things, you know, virtually happened in the same way. Rand, that rattles Rand. Rattly Rand, that rattles Rand. And he starts freaking out at the powerful woman, the Morianne. She... You know, he starts saying, "Is this you? Is this what you're doing? Are you putting this in our dream?" And he starts freaking out. Now, at that point, I was thinking, actually, we're meant to like Rand, but he's being a bit of an idiot.
Don't be an arse.
Basically. And in the book, I really like him in the book, the way he's written in the book, even if he gets a bit stubborn. But I don't know, there was just something, maybe it's the actor that's playing the part, I don't know, or maybe it's the dialogue, maybe it's the way it's written. But I just thought, actually, I'm not warm to Rand yet. I've not really like him just yet. You imagine, can you remember when they set up Frodo and Bilbo? You kind of like him. They're fun characters. He's not. He's just, is he bland? Is he Rand the bland? Don't know. The jury's still out. The jury's still out. He's obviously got good morals and he's got a good heart, but he's just a bit kind of nondescript at this point. I had hoped he'd have a bit more personality, because in the books he seems to have a bit more personality. Well, maybe that's just my reading on it. And that's the difference. When you read a book, you know, you start imagining what they're like, and you might embellish some of it. Then we meet the White Cloaks. Now, we already know from the pre-credits... Oh, by the way, the opening credits are beautiful. They are lovely. I didn't talk about that in episode 1, but yeah, I really like it. It's got like the magic, like the strands of the weave of the Wheel of Time, bending and twisting, you know, very colourful. I like that. I like the sort of gentle... It does remind me a little bit of Game of Thrones, just in the texture of it. Anyway, so we meet the White Cloaks. Now, we already know that they're a little bit cruel, to be feared. You know, that they're not necessarily going to give people a fair chance. So the Asher D, is that how you pronounce it? No, Asher D. Wasn't he a hip-hop artist?
Back in the day when I never asked. Back in the day when I never asked.
I might call it the Asher D then. The Asher Die. The Morianne says, "Oh, you know, we can't say I'm one of those, because they're against us." So she takes off the ring, gives it to Lan, and she says, "Look, I'm going to be a lady that's travelling. You're kind of going to be, you know, my employees, basically my servants, and I'm visiting a sick auntie, I think it is, or a sick sister, something like that." They make up a story, and she's all very nice and charming. And the questioner, who was basically torturing that other woman, he's there, and they question him a bit more, and he says, "Right, no, we're going to search you." And he starts sort of patting them down, and he pats Morianne's shoulder, and she says, "Don't touch there because there's a wound." And so he goes, "I want to see that." And so she shows him when it is a proper wound, and she's not faking it. And that's when we learn that she can't heal herself. But Erwin calls her out on that afterwards and says, "Well, actually, I thought you said, you know, there's some rules to being part of your, you know, clan. You can't lie." And she said, "Well, I didn't lie." She says, "Yeah, but you can heal." And he goes, "Yeah, but we can't heal ourselves." And there's some other things that she says you lied about, and she said, "No, I didn't lie. It was just bending the truth, if you like. And you have to, you know, that's why she said choose." And she tells her, choosing your words and how you say something is very important. Not everybody listens properly either. So she kind of gets out of that, which it was fair enough. And they managed to kind of fool these White Cloaks and off they go. I mean, they've got no evidence really, and off they go. Now the questioner, and again there seems to be a little bit of tension between the questioner and the sort of commander of the White Cloaks. Not a lot, but the questioner just says no, because he says we're going. Oh, that was it, because they get told about the Trollocs, the attack. She says, oh yeah, our village was attacked, and she says they're in the east, I think. And so the White Cloaks want to go and attack the Trollocs because they're against the Trollocs. So there is a common enemy between the White Cloaks and the Asher Dies.
Back in the day when I never eyed. Back in the day when I never eyed.
Even though they are kind of against each other, or certainly the the White Cloaks are chasing the Asher Dies. I don't think that it would be the other way round. They would just leave the White Cloaks in peace, I think. But there is a common enemy, which is the Dark One and the Trollocs. So they decide, well, let's go over to the east. He then, the commander, invites the questioner to come with him, and he says, no, we've got a higher purpose. Bit arrogant. So they're going elsewhere. Can't remember where they're going now, but they're going off to still find more Asher Dies, I think it is. Perrin... Then we cut, they go off, then there's another scene in the woods. Perrin has a wound on his leg. Now I'm assuming, I can't remember exactly how he got it. I think it was in the attack from the Trollocs. And it's not fully healed. And he's in the woods, and then all of a sudden he goes off to find some water or something. He just goes off when they're resting. And there's a pack of wolves. Yes, pack of wolves, not dire wolves like Game of Thrones, but a pack of wolves. So obviously it's like, oh, I'm going to get attacked here. He's got no weapons, you know, they're just basically country village folk. And luckily, the wolf, the leader of the wolf, comes up to him, sees the wound, because he was just sort of trying to attend to it and see if it had healed and that. So his leg, conveniently, has been rolled up, his trouser leg. And the wolf doesn't bite him or attack. It just licks his leg for a little bit, as though like to help him out to heal it, and then carries on, and the rest of the pack just sort of swarm around him and off they go. Phew! That was lucky. So a little bit mysterious, bit of foreshadowing for things to come. I do know what that's about, but I don't want to spoil it just yet. And then, what happens next after that? Yes, there is a second night of sleeping in the woods. But it is interrupted by the Trollocs, led by the Fade, and that's when we see the Fade, the leader, who is pretty scary. And they've found them, and they come rushing in. Lan is sort of sensing this. I think he's on watch. He kind of feels that they're just, you know, approaching, or he hears them, and you can hear the sort of horn. Maybe I think one of them's blowing the horn. They then try and flee, and it's sort of too late. The Trollocs are coming, and they're there, and then they stop. They just stop dead in their tracks. And it's like, what? What's going on? Luckily for our fellowship, there is an abandoned city. And it's this huge city with huge walls. And there seems to be like a long crack in the wall. And Lan says they won't come into this city. So we can escape into this city. And because there's so many of these Trollocs, there's no way they could defend themselves. That they would just get killed. So off they go into this abandoned city. It's ruined. It's spooky. It's spooky. It's abandoned. There's no birds or bugs to be seen or heard. It's very eerie. That's noted, you know. So obviously something is up there. We're not quite sure. But they decide to rest there as well. The Morianne is very weak now because I think she used a bit more magic, and she basically needs to rest. So they rest, and that's again obviously she can't heal herself, so they need to find another Asher Die, before they can heal. That's basically, I guess they'll find that when they get to this town that they're going to, this city. Now, Lan says about the history of the abandoned city, and the city is said to have an evil presence. There's something evil there. There's some sort of darkness there, some sort of dark magic. And he warns them, don't touch anything, only the stuff you brought with you. So if you find, you know, berries to eat or anything like that, don't even touch the berries. Eat any food that you've got with you. Don't touch anything. Any objects, you know, any treasure you might find, don't touch it. What could possibly go wrong? Yes, A couple of them go off to explore. Rand and Erwin go exploring. They do share a little romantic moment together. They start to hold hands. They look out over the city, and it is quite beautiful, but you know, it's dilapidated, it's ruined, but obviously, you know, that can be beautiful in itself. I love going to old castles. We're very lucky in England and the UK. We've got these old medieval, you know, 400 or 500 year old castles that are ruined. It's gorgeous. Some of them are ruined, and it's lovely going around them as well. They stand on the sort of ramparts. They climb up, they go on the ramparts, and they sort of look out and they hold hands. They hold hands. So it's a nice little episode there, despite, because they had a bit of bickering early on, because Rand doesn't trust Morianne. He knows that Morianne is trying to sort of convert her into her magical group of women, and Rand's not happy with that. And he expresses that, and Erwin says, well, look, you know, it's really got nothing to do with you. You know, I'll do it if I want to. But I'm assuming that they can't then have a boyfriend. I'm not sure. Certainly if she went into the wisdom, you have to forsake any, you know, romantic notions. So again, Rand was a little bit more understanding with that, because he probably knows more about the wisdom and knows that you know, he believes that they're, you know, for the good. Matt and Perrin go off exploring. And I've discovered who the blacksmith is. If you watch my episode 1, I was slightly confused who this blacksmith was, because in the book, one of them is a blacksmith. I think Perrin is the blacksmith. And so it's like, but there's a woman doing the blacksmithing. I'm not sure who, you know, if they made Perrin a woman in this. It's all been, I've learnt now. So it's Layla, I think her name is. She is the blacksmith, and she seems to have a romantic connection to Perrin, I think. She, though, gives a dagger that she's forged to Matt. And Matt then says to Perrin, look, I got given this, but I'm sure she would want you to have this, because she dies in the Trolloc attack. And so it's quite an emotional moment there. And he says, you know, you're probably, you know, she thinks you might get into more trouble and would need this than me. And so he gets given her dagger. Then they fall asleep. It's darkness. They fall asleep. While sleeping, Matt is woken up by the wind. We don't know. The horses are a little bit spooked, so he goes to investigate. And he explores more of the city, because the things sort of lead him on. You know, it's almost like he's being led somewhere. So he goes to explore a building, another abandoned building. And in there, there's a sort of little bit of moonlight coming through like a ruined window. He finds a rusty old metal box. Oh, it's just like fighting fantasy or any dungeon crawl. He finds a rusty old box, but inside it is a treasure. It is a very exquisitely made dagger with a beautiful red gemstone in the hilt. Of course, he's going to take it. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? It'd be very difficult to resist that sort of thing. He's obviously forgotten Lan's warning about taking it. Then, all of a sudden, a destructive shadow begins to creep along the floor and over the walls and in everywhere. And the horses are spooked even more. They rear up. One of them, a lot of them all, you know, they manage to snap their ropes somehow. And off they go. They charge out. One of them, though, gets touched by this black shadow that's crawling across the floor, the flagstones, and turns to dust. So we know, don't touch the shadow. They've got to run. It's very, very dangerous. And now we realise why the Trollocs won't come into this city. It is cursed. There's some sort of horrible evil shadow that seems to devour anything in its wake that it can, although it doesn't devour the buildings. So I don't know if that's a plot hole. No. Maybe it's living matter, organic. Yeah, let's go for that. So they then manage to sort of wake each other up, and they run off. They get split up because this shadow's coming in all directions. They get split into different groups. We've got Rand and Matt. They manage to escape the city one way. Rand and Matt. Yeah, did I say that? Rand and Matt. Rand and Matt, they escape one way. Morianne and Lan, they escape another way. And Erwin and Perrin, I was going to say Peregrine there, escape another way. And we're pretty much at the end of the episode. They then, sort of manage to escape. They're resting, it's like, woof, we got away with that. God, that was lucky. And it's like, well, I wonder where all the other people are. And it focuses on, let me have a look. Yes, it focuses on Lan and Morianne. So Morianne's sort of on the ground. Lan is tending her, saying, everything's going to be okay. And then there's a sword that comes to his throat. Who's holding the sword? It's somebody, again, I can't pronounce the name, but it is Nevin. She is the Wisdom. She's the leader of the Wisdom. Yes, she didn't die in the attack in episode 1 like we thought she did. No, she's back. Hurrah! And then roll credits. Whew. Well, it was a roller coaster of an episode, and I have discovered there's a glossary at the back of the book with even pronunciations, so you would have thought I'd get it right. See, that doesn't ever help me though, because I can't pronounce things I can't understand. But the Aes Sedai, wielders of the One Power since the time of madness, all are women, widely distrusted and feared, even hated, blamed for many of the breaking of the world and thought to meddle in the affairs of nations. At the same time, few rulers will be without an Aes Sedai advisor. Even in lands where the existence of such connection must be secret. Used as an honorific, so Shiram Sedai as a higher honorific. Yeah, so it's a title. So I might actually try and gen up on that. I might not if I get time. But there we are. That is episode 2. Again, I thoroughly enjoyed it. The acting, it wasn't as choppy, because the first 15 minutes of episode 1 were a bit choppy and a bit kind of all over the place. Didn't quite know who the characters were. I got to know the characters a bit better. I did enjoy it. It still follows the book closely. Now, I'm no expert. I'm just all new to this. There are fans that will know the intricacies of, what bits they've missed out, what bits they haven't. I don't think they're embellishing anything, so they're not really adding too much, which is good, because we all know what happened with Game of Thrones when they run out of the source material. This, they're following it. It seems like they're following it very closely. I can't detect if there's anything missed out. If they did, I'm sort of watching it as though it's a TV show rather than the book, so I'm not really saying, oh, they missed that out, they didn't miss that out. So it flowed for me. It did flow for me. Now remember that obviously Game of Thrones has lots of different subplots, and they were doing that from the beginning. That's how the structure was of the Game of Thrones. It's more like Lord of the Rings, and this is why it's more like Lord of the Rings, because it is more of A to B to C to D to E to F kind of plot. Here though, there'll be 3 different strands now, because we've had them split up. We've got Rand and Mat, Morin and Lan, and Erwin and Perrin. And that does create a more interesting story, because now they're going to be finding their way to this town separately, so they can have different adventures. And I think it's a good thing when that happens. It'll be more multi-layered. So it's good that they've done that in episode 2. It is good high fantasy fun. I did enjoy it. The acting I felt was better, so maybe they were settling into it. I know that filming is all out of order normally, but maybe they just, some of this might have been filmed later on. Who knows? But they seem to be more comfortable in the acting roles. The production values are still good. Yes, some of it does still look a little bit cheap. Some of the CGI, there's one bit in particular with the Trolloc that's on all 4s and he sort of scampers off. That looked a little bit cheap. But you know what? I can't blame them. They've spent millions on this series. So far, so good. I'm not expecting it to be as good as Lord of the Rings, the films, obviously, or even Game of Thrones, but they still do a very good job. I am still a little bit perturbed with sometimes clothes in this type of world look a bit too clean, but then, I think, is that a misnomer? I've been told that no, medieval times it would be clean, they still wash their clothes, and that's true, but I think they would be a bit more worn and faded. Remember Lord of the Rings, the clothes are a bit more worn and faded, so maybe I'm looking for a bit more of that. That would add to the realism a bit more. Yeah, Rand, I mentioned it. I thought, he isn't overly likable yet as a character, and I think that's going to be a big problem because he is in the books the main character. It's more even in this. He's one of the main characters. He doesn't appear to be the main character. But I just wonder, hopefully he'll have a bit more humour and a bit more life to him in the next couple of episodes, because otherwise he's just going to be a bit annoying. We shall find out. What else have I got here? Yeah, it was all good. The music again was very well done. It wasn't intrusive. I liked it. The magic and the fantasy element is obviously very good. We're getting more elements of the world building. There's still a mystery of the magic, which is nice. It's sort of soft magic in that respect. We don't quite know the rules of it yet. I would imagine that the more the episodes unfold, the more we learn about the One Power and what it can and can't do, and the cost that it has on people that actually cast it and use it. Plus, we don't know anything about the Dragonborn yet, apart from they're just going to stand up against the Dark One, so we don't know their power. There's good storytelling, and again, they're sticking to the book, and the book works. It sold 90 million copies for a reason. There's cause and effect. Good storytelling. You can't just have that happens, then that happens, then that happens, then that happens, without actually one triggering the other. You have to have cause and effect. You have to have characters wanting motivation. You have to have conflict and things blocking their desire and their objectives, which you do have. So overall, yes, I'm thoroughly enjoying this. I'm sure there are going to be some people that aren't going to be happy because it's like, well, it doesn't really follow the books, etc., etc., and they miss stuff out. I would say if you think about it, though, they have to have as many people watch this as possible because they've spent a fortune on this. They probably want people to sign up, new members, to their streaming service. This is a good vehicle to do this. It will get a lot of people who have a passing interest in fantasy. It might be, I like Lord of the Rings. Yeah, let's watch this. So I understand that some people may complain that it's not, hardcore enough for them. But I can definitely understand why they've done it this way. So I would say, carry on watching it. If you've not seen it, it's definitely worth investing some time into this. Thank you so much for watching. It's been a pleasure once again. Look out for my review of episode 3. That will be coming out fairly soon, hopefully, fingers crossed. And also check out the other episodes that I've done on the Mythical Tales from Edra YouTuber channel. Feel free to subscribe, or, if you like what I do, even if I don't like what I do, why don't you subscribe anyway? Or if you have a favourite YouTuber, why don't you subscribe and like their videos as well? It all helps. Until next time, may the magic of the One Power flow through you always.